All right. It looks like everyone has made it. Thank you for showing up. I know this is a big inconvenience on your time, but as you know, we have been dealing with a lot in the last 24 hours, and it's my job to make sure you understand exactly what we're doing and how we're going to fix this. So in the next couple minutes, we're going to go over specifically our cyber operations and risk management. So take out your pens and pencils, prepare to take some notes as we dive into exactly what we're doing, how we can overcome and mitigate all the risks. So let's take a look at what software assurance is and why it's important and why do we need to understand it. Specifically, software assurance seeks to reduce or remove vulnerabilities in order to increase confidence that software can be used securely and effectively. So why is this important? Specifically when you're talking about software assurance and the cybersecurity aspects of it, you're looking at the quality, the safety of it, the reliability, and the verification and validation of why you can use the softwares that you use safe and effectively. So when you're talking about software quality assurance, it consists of three major parts. Quality control, which ensures that software follows a specific process and includes the correct specifications. Quality assurance, which verifies the software processes are correct and advises on the best procedures and processes. And then you have quality engineering, which performs analysis of the software product so you know that your product is actually working. Software reliability helps software systems to be more robust and dependable and builds in fault and helps with failure tolerance basically. It also analyzes the software and systems to find areas of weakness and predicts problem areas via metrics, maybe tools and other analysis. And when you speak about software safety, it's a systematic approach basically to identifying, analyzing, tracking, mitigating, and controlling software contributions to hazardous or hazardous functions that a software might perform, such as data commands. This will ensure safer operations basically within your system. Next, we kind of want to move into understanding the key components of the software development cycle. Currently, we are using the spiral methodology in regards to the software development lifecycle. Specifically, there are many different key components to this methodology, which include many benefits as well as risks. But essentially, what we're doing here is that we are going to be following this model that will encompass the planning phase, risk analysis phase, engineering phase, evaluation phase. And even more specifically, the spiral model significantly reduces risk and is good for large projects and allows for future functionality. Say that things need to be added on or changed within this model, we are able to do that to the software using the spiral methodology. And basically it's pretty simple. So if you take a look here at the chart, it starts in the middle and makes its way around and around and around, hitting the various different little spots on this model, making sure that wherever we are within the development life cycle, everything is controlled by us. We know what's going on and we can move back and forth through the model effortlessly. So when you specifically look at supply chain and the risk associated with the supply chain, there's a couple different things that we actually see within the information and potential communication technology supply chain. But essentially, the ICT, or the information communication technology supply chain, is a complex, globally distributed, and it's interconnected supply chain ecosystem that has a lot of different geological diverse routes and consists of multiple tiers of outsourcing. But basically, the top 5 supply chain factors include country of origin risk factors, shipment and delivery risk factors, physical security risk factors, internal processes risk factors, and social and environment responsibilities. Now, if you take a look at the diagram we kind of have here, we have supply risks, operational risks, demand risks, and you see the factors we kind of have there: environmental, geopolitical, economic, and technological. The graph is kind of broken down into the probability, with red being high, over 30%, orange or yellow being average between 15 and 30%, and low being below 15%. And then you have mitigation over here, uncontrollable being a green, influential being a light blue, and controllable being a baby blue. And obviously, when it comes to the high probability in the uncontrollable mitigation, you have your environmental factors here, the natural disasters and extreme weather. But the big part you kind of want to look at is the geopolitical and the economic factors here, and political instability, trade restrictions, and terrorism, as well as demand shocks, price volatility, and border delays. So those are kind of the bigger ones that you see are going to be influenceable and kind of fall within that high range, basically. So those are the ones we're really concerned about, as well as the technological when you're looking at the ICT distribution as well. So as we kind of make our way through, we want to understand the existing software vulnerabilities that we kind of have right now. So specifically looking at what systems are in operation and what are the vulnerabilities to the systems that we kind of have in place right now. Basically, right now we are using the Windows 10 operating system. There aren't a lot of vulnerabilities right now with the current system. However, the top 10 vulnerabilities to the Windows system are listed right here in this chart, as you can see. And to kind of go over each one here, so we have Internet Information Services, Microsoft Data Access Components, Remote Data Services, Microsoft SQL servers, we have netbots, we have anonymous logons, LAN management authentication, general Windows authentication, basically accounts with no passwords or weak passwords, Internet Explorer vulnerabilities, as well as remote registry access and Windows scripting hosts. But to even dive down even more deep into the Windows 10 vulnerabilities, we look at an elevation of privilege vulnerability. Basically, this vulnerability includes a flaw in the GUI component of Windows 10, namely the scroll bar element. Basically, it allows a threat actor to gain complete control of a Windows machine through privilege escalation. Then you have Windows 10 Wi-Fi Sense. It has contact sharing. So by default, Windows 10 will share your Wi-Fi credentials to Outlook, Skype, and Facebook contacts. Basically, if your Wi-Fi is on, if you're using a hotspot, sharing is easier. This makes it possible for anyone using these or you're in your contacts to hop on your Wi-Fi network if they're in a proximity without authorization. Microsoft actually has a font driver vulnerability. The Windows Adobe Type Manager basically is improperly handles specifically crafted open type fonts, which can result in remote code execution vulnerability. This maybe could lead to attackers gaining complete control of the system to install different programs through this open type font vulnerability. So next we'll kind of look at the net framework, escalation of privilege vulnerability. Again, so net applications can be used to escalate privilege and exploit different holes in the system because of these net applications. And so basically, users must first be convinced or tricked into running these applications, but that also poses a threat if you have a lot of different applications running and you kind of clicking and choosing which ones you want to open without being 100% sure that's the right thing you need to be opening. So there's also a redirect to SMB vulnerability. Basically, this is a security flaw that impacts all versions of Windows, including the one that we use is Windows 10. It primarily involves the core Windows API library and how Windows connects to SMB. This could result in Windows users being redirected to malicious SB based servers and having their encryption logged in credentials stolen. Then you look at specifically the Microsoft Windows Journal vulnerability. This vulnerability basically could allow remote control or remote access execution or code execution to allow users to openly craft journal files within the system. And then obviously Microsoft is known for their Internet Explorer vulnerabilities, and basically the biggest part of that is that attackers can potentially gain access to the network and the system through user rights taken from Internet Explorer when you use it. Now, one of the biggest vulnerabilities that we've seen with Windows 10 OS is that there is a Windows Mount Manager vulnerability, and basically what happens is that this vulnerability allows for potential escalation of privilege if you insert a USB device into the system. If this happens, an attacker could write malicious binary code to the disk and execute the code and open up a whole can of worms. So we definitely don't want that to happen. So this is something we definitely want to take a look at. So now that we understand, what our vulnerabilities are right now, it's essential to understand what options are available to us as far as software options. So what are the software options right now that we can potentially use to our advantage and help us move forward with the business functions? Essentially, we have Linux, Ubuntu, and Mac OS. And Linux is an open source operating system based on Unix. While Ubuntu is an open source operating system based on Linux, and then you have the Mac operating system, which is created by Apple, and is Apple's Macintosh staple operating system. So the big part here is what are we going to do about all these vulnerabilities. So the recommendations for software improvements, basically, if you take a look here at table number 4, our software improvement recommendations, on the left we have improvements. So the suggested recommendation is a secure patch management policy and the implementation of a cyber risk management software. Basically, patch management is an area of systems management that involves acquiring, testing, and installing multiple patches or code changes to an administrated computer system. And then you look at implementation of a cyber risk management software. Cyber risk management software is utilized to manage and mitigate cybersecurity risks. There are many types of different softwares available. And so moving forward, we really do believe that the recommendations is to improve the current OS software systems, is to implement these different things that can mitigate our risk and help with moving forward in a secure fashion. Now that we've understood what recommendations we need to take for our software, let's take at the supply chain improvement and recommendations as well. Specifically, if you take a look here at the chart, we have the frame, which goes into monitoring the assets and the response communication flows between all three here. And specifically, we want to take a look at what those recommendations are. So starting with number 1 here, defining the most important vendors. We want to make sure that control who we speak to and who they are and who have access to us. So we want to define the most important vendors. Specifically, we want to specify the primary contacts for each vendor. We want to know who we're going to talk to for these vendors, who the vendors are, and who we're going to talk to specifically. Then we want to be establishing guidelines and controls to ensure consistent processes. So not only is it important to understand the most important vendors, who those primary contacts are, but make sure that those people who are doing the communication through the communication flow understand the guidelines and the controls that are in place, so that when you go through the pipeline over and over again, that it's a consistent process and nothing is being changed, and it's very, very, very guarded, and it's very, very controlled. And the last thing here, for as far as recommendations go, is integrating with the organization's assessments and audit practices. So basically, encompassing all the different recommendations and controlling and having these guidelines, make sure that everyone's on the same page. Make sure that everyone knows the streamlined process, that when audits happen, everyone's on the same page, and assessments happen, everyone's on the same page, and it's dress right dress, and it's good to go moving forward from audit to audit through the communication channels, and every time there is something moving through the supply chain. Now, it's not only important to understand what we're specifically looking for as far as improving our softwares, improving the supply chain, and how we're going to mitigate risk in both software and supply chain. We need to understand how much it's going to cost us. So specifically, let's take a look at the cost and a detailed recommendations that we are going to kind of push forward here. So table 6 definitely does that for us. And if you look closely, you have recommendations on the left. So the ICT, supply chain risk management process implementation, secure patch management policy implementation, and the implementation of a cyber risk management program or software. So here you see the cost ranging from anywhere from 3 to 4 in the spectrum of 1 to 5 here, and then we have the platforms: Apple, Windows, Linux, and then we actually have specific brand names for the different types of policies that we want to incorporate, and the actual ones we do recommend. So we have here for the supply chain risk management process, we have the Oracle SCM Cloud. Then we have the Manage Engine Patch Manager plus software for the secure patch management policy, and then we have Integrum for the implementation of a cyber risk management software as well. And to dive deep into specifically a little bit more about these different programs and different softwares, Integrum is a cloud-based risk compliance management solution for organizations of all sizes. Basically, it helps in managing quality, health, safety, environment, risk, and compliance. Basically, the key features include incident management, investigation management, risk and compliance management, audit management, contractor management, controlled document management, action management, and also reporting and analysis. The Manage Engine Patch Manager Plus is a cloud-based patch management software for small, mid-sized, and large businesses. Basically, it is suitable for businesses in banking, finance, IT services, healthcare, pharmaceutical, military, government, logistics, education, and so on and so forth. But basically, the primary features include patch tracking, patch deployment, patch testing, patch compliance, and reporting as well. And then the big one is the Oracle SCM Cloud. Basically, what this is going to do is going to offer a full suite of applications for any company or organization to manage their supply chain, the distribution, the manufacturing, inventory management, and if there's any fleets involved in that. Last but not least here, we want to talk about contract language and the recommendations we have that. So what is contract language and why is it important? Basically, contract language can be defined as a legally enforceable agreement between two or more parties or entities for an exchange between them. Specifically, the recommended contract language should include an offer, a valuable consideration, acceptance and mutual agreement, and understanding the capacity in which the agreement should be completed. So basically, looking at here is an offer. The language must be or must have a description of the item or the service is going to be provided. Contracts must list the valuable consideration or payment for the item or service. When it comes to valuable consideration, acceptance and mutual agreement, mutual assets, or a meeting of the minds, legal terms for parties, in agreeing on a contract must demonstrate that people are named in the contract agreement and everything is dressed and written in the contract so everyone knows exactly what the deal is going to be made for. And then when you take a look at the recommendation for understanding capacity, contract signers must have the capacity to agree without any outside influence. And also, signers must also have the capacity to understand the actual contract language. This is important, especially when you're within the software development lifecycle, as well as understanding the supply chain, that everyone knows what's going on at any given time and it's agreed upon before anything takes place. So those are our recommendations, and that's why it's important to understand the contract language and the recommendations we give for making an offer, making it valuable consideration. Everyone understands that it needs to be accepted and it's a mutual agreement, and everyone needs to understand the capacity of which the agreement is going to be made. All right, you made it through. Thank you for your time. I know that was a lot of information. However, it is my personal belief that understanding and knowledge can help us move forward to protecting ourselves in the future and mitigating all risks that we may encounter as a team. So let's go forth and implement everything that we talked about so that our future generations can learn from our mistakes and forge their own path into the future. This is Burris. Take care.